Hello, lovely people. Well, in typical high-profile true crime internet form, a phony, manufactured debate has erupted in one groupthink bubble of content creators who cover the murders of Ethan Chapin, Xander Kernodle, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Gonzalez at the University of Idaho. A group of so-called true crime sleuthers have coalesced into a rabid group of Bryan Kohberger martyr makers. All right. Pretty soon, you may see him depicted on a cross with a ring of thorns around his head. And if you only listen to one group of YouTubers, you'll completely believe that Bryan Kohberger is being royally screwed by the man. You'll go around live chats and comment sections on channels like mine saying ignorant stuff like this and this and this, even when the video that they're commenting under has nothing to do with Bryan Kohberger. And even when it's obvious that they haven't viewed more than 10 seconds of my video. This same group of people will now accuse me of painting Bryan Kohberger as a monster or an animal, even though I've not said any such thing. They will jump into my comment section without even watching up to this point in the video, and they'll accuse me of slandering him. They'll say that because of channels like mine, Bryan Kohberger will not get a fair trial. At the same time, this same group of people will lap up content that invades the privacy of innocent bystanders and lobs new, monstrous allegations against them nearly every day. These channels dig into the criminal and social media profiles of roommates and witnesses, and they whip it out to their channels as if they have solved the crime once again, even though they never solved it before. Meanwhile, they ignore the fact that there's really only one person in the entire world who has more evidence against him than anyone else, and that's Bryan Kohberger. Let's take a minute to walk through the hard evidence, shall we? Okay. We know that a leather knife sheath was found underneath one of the victims, and that Bryan Kohberger's touch DNA was found on that knife sheath. We know that a white Elantra that looks very much like Bryan's was seen circling the neighborhood on the night of the murders. We know that Bryan Kohberger is the only human being in the world who can account for his time at the time we believe the murders took place. And why is that? Because his phone was turned off. Isn't that convenient? And he claims that he was just driving around aimlessly between the hours of when the kids were thought to have been murdered. We know that we cannot say the same things about anyone else in the world, at least that we know of at this point in time. And we know that our Constitution requires the law to consider Bryan Kohberger innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Therefore, we know that Bryan's defense team is mounting an aggressive defense. And you know what? He very much has the right to that defense. I hope he gets an aggressive defense. So we know that whatever trial he faces and whatever verdict he faces, it's a just verdict. And finally, you know what we also know? We know that within the last 24 hours, the judge in this case, denied the second motion to dismiss the case against Bryan Kohberger. So this aggressive defense that the team has been mounting has failed to prove that the prosecution has framed Bryan Kohberger, has planted evidence, or is acting on bad faith in the prosecution of Bryan Kohberger. Now, here are a few things that you may not know, but I do know from watching many trials over the years and from being married to a litigator for over 10 years. I know that all the pre-trial motions Bryan Kohberger's team is filing are a very normal defense strategy for a high-profile murder trial whose defendant is facing the death penalty. These lawyers know that they need to throw as much blame as possible at the state for failing to turn over evidence or failing to turn over the work product or treating the defendant in some sort of way. They know that the more they do that, it will require a televised hearing and it will make their client, their defendant, appear more and more like a martyr. And it will inspire more and more of these unethical, undisciplined, and frankly predatory tragedy pimps who can't wait to spike their numbers by going against the grain and making Bryan Kohberger look like the victim of a massive underground police cover-up, they know that that's going to happen, and that is indeed what happens. So, do I think Bryan Kohberger is a monster? I have absolutely no idea. But I know for a fact that he's not a martyr. If there are any martyrs in this story, it starts with the original victims whose lives were senselessly taken. The next wave of martyrs are the friends and family members of those victims, and that line of martyrs is closely followed by those whose characters were slain and chewed up and spit out by the cruelty of the dregs of the internet, many of which operate right next door to my channel here in True Crime. And that's the scary thing. That's why you got to watch out and understand the red flags. The truth of the matter is, we don't know jack shit about this case until it goes to trial. And any new conclusions before that are fiction straight from vulturous asses. Okay? Speaking of trials, I go live on my other channel to talk about current and former trials, and I do plan to live stream Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger. Prior to the trial, I'll do a live stream of some of his hearings, so please go to that other channel and check it out. But in the meantime, thanks for watching this video, and peace out.